everyone. Welcome back to Finance Friday. It's another special edition of Money Girl where I answer your burning money questions. Today, we have an amazing topic that comes from Dan, who says, I'm a 35-year-old man who owns a home and is happily partnered with no kids yet. I have a potentially strange question because I'm in the fortunate position of being quite financially secure. I've worked very hard after growing up in a financially unstable household. I paid off nearly $80,000 in college debt by the age of 26, rose quickly in my nonprofit career to an annual salary of about $200,000. And then about a year ago, I left that track to launch a consulting business. This year, my business revenue before taxes will exceed $500,000, quite miraculously. I have some subcontractors, but my business expenses are relatively low. I have about $300,000 left on a mortgage at a 2.9% interest rate and about $20,000 on a car loan with 0% interest. And I've saved about $400,000 for retirement. So I'm in the most secure position I could have imagined. I'm pretty careful with my spending and am trying not to inflate my lifestyle, but I'm struggling to determine what my goals should be. When I was making less money, it seemed easier to set goals and budgets. But now I don't really know where to begin. I have a great financial advisor, but I still feel a little lost about whether to expand the business, invest more in philanthropic causes, or save more for emergencies for myself, my friends, and family. How does someone who's financially successful set goals and a budget? I love your excellent question and want to congratulate you on your financial success, Dan. Your hard work and courage to launch a new venture have clearly paid off. Yes, you're in a terrific position that many people dream of. However, you've acknowledged that being financially secure can come with its own set of challenges, and that's not strange at all. This podcast will explore tips for creating new or better financial goals as you achieve greater success. Even if you're not feeling successful right now, these tips can help improve your money mindset. Welcome back, everyone. It's episode 967 of Money Girl. I really appreciate you being here and downloading the show. I'm Laura Adams, an award-winning author, on-camera spokesperson, money speaker, and founder of The Money Stack. That's my Substack newsletter. You can learn more, ask any money question, and sign up for The Money Stack when you visit lauradadams.com. You can always get the newsletter for free, or you can become a paid member with access to my live educational and Q&A events. Additionally, you can ask a money question by leaving a voicemail by calling 302-364-0308. When you don't have much financial security, maybe it's because you've got low income, high expenses, or a lot of debt, your financial goals are crystal clear. You're constantly on the defensive with your money. Maybe you're, just trying to earn more, cut costs, and eliminate debt so you can save and invest more. But once you achieve essential financial goals and have more security, your mindset should shift, regardless of your age. You could be in your 30s like Dan, or a retiree in your 60s or 70s who finally has enough to feel comfortable. That change means you no longer need to worry about protecting yourself, but you have the luxury of focusing on what you genuinely want to create in your life and in the world around you. It can be challenging to shift from budgeting out of necessity to planning for impact or fulfillment. So we'll go through 5 tips for setting goals when you're financially secure. Tip number 1. Create a values-based spending plan. Now, I always prefer the term spending plan over budget because budgets just seem restrictive to me. A spending plan gives you the power to decide what you can and want to spend money on. Since Dan's new high income gives him lots of flexibility, I understand feeling unsure about how to prioritize it. However, your spending plan should always reflect your personal values, regardless of whether you have a little or a lot of money? It sounds like Dan has already been thinking about some really big questions like, what makes me happy? What impact do I want to have on the world? And what legacy do I want to leave behind? I recommend that Dan spend more time contemplating the answers to these questions. He may also want to discuss them with his partner and come up with some top-level categories like investing for retirement, starting a family, or giving more, whatever is their priority. Those types of wishes and values should lay the foundation for your spending plan. Tip number 2. Decide on buckets to fund. So once you identify the primary categories or buckets that you want to fund, you can create specific goals. For example, I'll go through 5 potential financial buckets. One could be financial independence. So Dan mentioned having $400,000 for retirement, which is terrific. He could set a goal to invest a percentage of his gross income or simply to max out a tax-advantaged account like a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. For 2025, you can contribute up to $70,000 to those types of self-employed retirement accounts when you're under age 50. Maxing out a retirement account sooner rather than later allows it to grow longer and means you may reach a time when you no longer need to make contributions to become financially independent. In addition, businesses have good and bad years, so you want to take advantage of the profitable years and invest in your future when it's possible. Another category or bucket might be business growth. Dan mentioned having excellent business revenue with relatively low expenses. That's an ideal situation when it's sustainable. However, suppose Dan wants to grow his business by hiring employees or investing in marketing. In that case, he should allocate a set percentage of revenue, like 5% or 15%, to reinvest in the business. Emergencies is another important financial category or bucket to fund. Dan did not mention having emergency savings outside of a retirement account, which is essential to maintain. So I recommend maintaining a minimum of 3 months worth of living expenses in FDIC-insured bank savings, just in case business revenue declines or you have high unexpected expenses. You can include family and friends in this bucket, which might look like a separate savings account simply for helping loved ones. You can allocate a percentage of your income or even just set a dollar amount that you'd be willing to give away or loan to family or friends. And speaking of giving, Dan mentioned philanthropy, which is an excellent goal you can create based on a percentage of your income, such as 5% or 10% or more. He could discuss setting up a donor-advised fund with his financial advisor. This type of fund allows you to get a tax deduction now on contributions, and then you can decide which charities to support later. And lastly, Dan might want to consider a bucket for experiences. Dan, I applaud your effort to maintain a modest lifestyle, even as your income has risen. Inflating your expenses, like purchasing a more expensive home or car, can lead to unnecessary stress, especially if your business experiences a downturn in the future. However, after working hard, it's essential to set aside money for things that bring you joy. Whether it's a long annual vacation or maybe multiple shorter getaway trips, hobbies, or hiring help to avoid burnout, you want to put these things that bring you joy in your spending plan. So the types and number of spending buckets or goals that you create are entirely up to you. All right, the third tip is to automate your spending buckets. After identifying these key categories or buckets to fund, it's time to implement your plan by automating it. For instance, you can set up recurring weekly or monthly transfers from your personal checking account to your retirement account and other savings accounts based on a flat dollar amount or a percentage of income that you choose. You could set up a recurring transfer from a business checking account to a business savings account to allocate funds for business growth. Many business checking accounts allow you to create sub-accounts for any purpose, like taxes or growth initiatives. Automating your values-based financial goals ensures that funds regularly move to the right accounts, eliminating the need for manual decisions or transfers. Automation increases the likelihood that you'll reach your goals, pure and simple. Of course, if your goals change, you can always alter or stop automated transfers. Tip number 4, adjust your spending buckets. Consider creating a spending plan that you reevaluate annually at, the very minimum. See if you meet your stated goals or changed your mind halfway through. There's nothing wrong with adjusting your targets or adding or deleting a category. For instance, if Dan decides to start a family, he may want a larger home or to invest in a 529 college savings fund. You can always start with relatively small or conservative goals and increase them annually as your income allows. And my last tip, number 5, is to leverage a financial advisor. Dan mentioned having a great financial advisor, but still feeling lost. Dan, instead of relying on an advisor to create specific goals, it's time to empower them based on your values-based plan and then ask for guidance. In other words, once you have a spending plan, you can and should shift the conversation. Instead of asking, what should I do? You can say, what are the most tax-efficient ways to fund my 5 financial buckets? I mentioned using a donor-advised fund. Dan could ask his financial advisor to explain the pros and cons of using one of these donor-advised funds for any intended philanthropy. Dan could also ask his advisor to discuss the best way to reinvest a certain amount back into his business if that's a current priority. In addition, it's critical to have the right insurance to protect your personal and business finances. You could say, where am I financially vulnerable to potential risks and loss? If your financial advisor doesn't sell insurance, they may have a good referral, or you could even ask an existing insurance agent for guidance. The bottom line is that you want to consider yourself the CEO or the chief executive officer of your financial life, and your advisor as your CFO or Chief Financial Officer. They can help you implement your vision using the right financial accounts, insurance, and tax strategy. To sum up, as you transition from financial survival to success, you should become more thoughtful and intentional about creating a fulfilling life. No one can create financial goals for you because your dreams and situation are unique. Dan, thank you so much again for your terrific question. Since you sent it to me, I know you're already making progress in identifying the right goals for you, your family, and your business, and I wish you all the best. If you're enjoying Money Girl, take a moment to let us know by rating and reviewing the show in your podcast app. That's all for now. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, here's to living a richer life. Money Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast, and we've got a great team working on the show that I want to thank. Steve Rickyberg audio engineers the podcast. Holly Hutchins is our director of podcast. Morgan Christensen is our advertising operations specialist. Rebecca Sebastian is our marketing and publicity manager. And Nathaniel Hoops is our marketing contractor.